Yes, it is episode number 17 of the Nasty Metal Podcast. Alright, so what do I have lined up for this episode here in terms of, topics and whatnot? Well, I guess there really isn't much to really, as far as topics, it's not very much, because I'm going to at least have some just brief discussion of the situation, or at least the growing situation on the whole David Ellefson with Megadeth thing, because there's some new stuff that came out, and especially regarding even the new album. And then, of course, even also here and there talking about the most newest song from Enforcer, and then to a Q&A segment. That right now is what I'm going to be discussing here. Of course, as far as scheduled content, well, you know what? There is going to be a schedule for next week. I'm planning on releasing back to at least 2 reviews for next week, being in back to the Wednesday reviews, and of course keeping still with the Friday reviews, and of course a album of the week. So let's see what is lined up for that week. Anyways, what is the album of the week for Monday, and what are the reviews, being one for Wednesday and Friday. So let me get my phone here so I can look at my calendar, which is where my scheduled content is. All right, let's look at this. What is my content here? All right, let's look. All right, so. Episode 117 of the album of the week is, of course, spotlight on Direct Line, the debut from Dead Ringer, who were a part of the new wave or British heavy metal movement. However, they don't seem to get they acknowledged for some reason, because again, there's hard rock, but just like with Praying Mantis, I mean, Metal Archives, I think is the one that doesn't want to put them on there. Even though they have so many questionable other fucking bands on there, still, they were a part of the movement. It's just that they weren't the heaviest band. Still, not every band that was a part of that movement was heavy, too. So, the whole definition is fucking stupid there. But that is going to be episode 117. That's going to be Monday's release, so for Wednesday, since this really isn't completely scheduled, but I am planning on having these as reviews. So, let me get my thing over here. Alright. So, the Wednesday review is a review on the debut album from, I think they are Canadian. I might be wrong, though. But I think they are Canadian. They're called Starlight Ritual, and it's titled Sealed in Starlight. Was it Steel in Starlight? I can't remember the album that Shock Paris had. But it's almost like a similar album title. But it's Sealed in Starlight is the album here. And again, from Starlight Ritual, that's going to be Wednesday's review. And then, of course, for Friday's review is going to be, let me look at this here. Decadence and Decay from Silver Talon. So there we go. That's what's being lined up for next week from Monday through Friday. There we go. So that's pretty much it for the scheduled content part of this, or at least the revealing of scheduled content for this podcast here. Alright, so what is going on within the fucking Megadeth camp here? Since already I kind of discussed about it or talked about on the last podcast, which was number 16. Obviously, over the scandal between David Ellefson and the fucking 19-year-old girl who obviously egged on David Ellefson, who egged him on to do it anyways, to basically whip out his prick, basically. The whip out his pricker, the fucking, and jerk off, basically. And given that he was already a married man, it was not a good look. And the person, I thought it was a girl that shared the fucking video, but it was actually a man that, was it a man or a she? Or was it another girl? You know what, I forgot. You know what, that doesn't matter which fucking gender that actually fucking, shared the damn video through, was it Instagram? Either way, it didn't matter. Obviously, the person really had it in for David Ellefson, like if he owed him fucking money, and didn't. So what the fuck? It really became a discombobulated mess, and it ultimately had it resulted in David Ellefson pretty much receiving his release papers, honestly, in favor of damage control. And now Dave Mustaine is now pulling more damage control, because for the new album, he is not going to be using David Ellefson's bass recording, his bass tracks for the album. He's going to get those bass tracks re-recorded by the replacement bass player, which has yet to be announced on who is replacing David Ellefson and Megadeth. This is what, the second fucking time already. We kind of always figure that, but we didn't know that freaking Dave Mustaine was gonna really go this far with damage control. I mean, yes, it should tell you already that David Ellefson had already had his bass parts recorded. Again, he already had his bass tracks recorded for the album, but because since they had yet to even to release the album, or have yet to really mix it, they had to. Dave Mustaine decided to not want to use them, because I don't know. I guess at this point, does he not want to pay royalties to David Ellefson? I guess not then. But to me, it's just damage control. It is plain as day, or clear as day actually, that this is just damage control. And so he's just doing anything to kind of, at least to keep his image fucking clean, even though he doesn't have a very clean past anyways. So I don't know. I mean, and it's not like that the whole situation with David Ellefson was any worse than any other fucking musician who was probably done far worse, that actually had their fucking tracks left in a fucking album. I mean, funny enough, to kind of make a comparison would be to the Norwegian black metal band Mayhem for their debut album, which let me kind of pull up, because I always have a hard time pronouncing that particular album's name. Let me go to Metal Archives here so I can search up the album so I can mention here. So let me go up to here. Right here. All right. It is Die Mysterious Dom Satanas. No. That album. They made it clear that after the funeral of their their founding member, Euronymous, that to his parents, that they weren't going to be using Varg Vikernes's his recorded parts for the album. They decided anyways, because since they probably couldn't find any, this was the reason for why they kept this tracks intact in the album, instead of removing them and having those tracks, those track parts re-recorded, was they really couldn't properly re-record them, or they just can never get close to copying those tracks. So they just kept them in and did it secretly behind the parents' back, and obviously it still got a lot of notoriety, but it still made money, and it still is considered a classic black metal album. But he fucking killed a man. Varg Vikernes actually killed a person that was Euronymous. Varg killed Euronymous. He killed fucking somebody. And his tracks was actually left on the fucking album. Maybe because of the Norwegian actually has balls compared to the fucking pussy that is Dave Mustaine these days. And all fucking David Ellefson did was just stupidly jack off compared to what fucking Varg did. And God, and even Varg was even close to fucking blowing up a fucking church because he was going to, apparently he was setting up, was it like TNT and shit, and was going to just level it. Basically almost fucking terrorism. He was going to fucking kill more fucking people. And his fucking recorded parts for that album was left in. But oh no, David Ellefson, oh God, he jerks off to because a 19-year-old girl was egging him on. I guess that's worse than killing somebody in cold blood. Even though Varg says he had a fucking reason for killing Euronymous, still he murdered someone. And all David Ellefson did was just do, I was gonna say, idolatry, which to me is still not anywhere worse than killing somebody, and almost even close to fucking blowing up more fucking people. Literally, fucking domestic terrorism is, in this day and age, or at least at that period, wow, that was horrible. But apparently, fucking committing idolatry or whatnot, because since both David Ellefson and Dave Mustaine are fucking Christians, and basically idolatry is cheating. You know, cheating, or that is the definition for that. Basically, cheating on your spouse. Basically, because he was basically, in some way, shape, or form, kind of was, because he was jacking off to another woman. That apparently is worse than committing murder. My fucking mind is blown. So who knows whether the album is going to be good in the end on what happens again. Because again, David Ellefson, his bass playing was a key element. It was a key character. It's just an ingredient. It made Megadeth sound. It's like, while Dave Mustaine may have had the real explosive nuclear riffs and again, it's an acquired taste for his vocals, but it worked. It fit the music. Anybody else that was probably going to sing a fucking Megadeth track half the time, I don't think would actually do well unless you're at least the band Archer Nation. Still, nobody else could do Dave Mustaine stuff better than Dave Mustaine, and David Ellefson was again one of the biggest. It was like the glue. He was like almost Gorilla Glue, really, because it formed everything, it kept everything together, and then of course with the tight rhythm section. But David Ellefson was always one that really was the glue that really kept all the pieces together. And now we'll see, because again, some of the albums after David Ellefson, when he had first left over the first time, it was for legal reasons. There was a lot of issues between the two originally, and the albums that were released after that, while were not terrible. Again, I'm not a really big fan of The World Needs a Hero or even The System Has Failed. Still, they weren't terrible records, but you can tell that without that bass playing, without David Ellefson's key ingredients, it didn't really make any of the records sound. It didn't sound anywhere great. It just, you could tell something was missing there, and of course, I mean, there's always exceptions. United Abominations and Endgame I thought were pretty good albums. And so, but of course, the first album with David Ellefson back in the band being 13, well, it wasn't very great, but it wasn't the worst fucking thing I think Megadeth had released. That would come a year later, and I don't have to really mention that album. But Dystopia was fine. So I guess I'm going to say it really hasn't been any great to begin with, so who knows how the album is going to turn out. It probably would sound like any sort of sort of modern Megadeth record like Dystopia or Endgame. It's going to sound more closer to probably that. Maybe even 13 or fucking Super Collider, since I just now mentioned the fucking album. Who knows? Who knows? But again, David Ellefson was a key ingredient, and without him, it's probably going to... Who knows? Maybe with all the backlash, it's probably going to make Dave Mustaine maybe rethink that idea on getting rid of his bass tracks, and might think, fuck, I'm probably going to jade my fans. So fuck it, I'll put his bass tracks back in, and I'll just have to figure out paying him, and he'll probably be fine with it. So who knows? Who knows what's gonna happen, if Dave Mustaine's gonna change his mind, or he's gonna go through with the fucking idea on replacing his bass tracks. Again, it's not like David Ellefson really killed somebody. For fuck's sake, it's so stupid. The whole thing, the whole situation. Of all the scandals, it's probably the dumbest thing, even though, yeah, it is a pretty bad look, but it can't be any worse than what else has fucking done. My God. Can anybody even get a grip on fucking reality anymore? I think everyone just lost it. Everyone is losing a grip on reality and are just succumbing to madness or whatever. They're just succumbing into the fucking never-ending void of bullshit. So there we go. So there's just my whole fucking 2 cents on the whole situation here with Megadeth, and now the whole situation surrounding the upcoming new album. But speaking of an upcoming new album, since we already just have at least we got a new track for this upcoming new album, it is Kiss of Death. No, it is not a cover of a Dokken track, not even a cover of a Motorhead song, or yada 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 yada. It is an original track from Swedish heavy metal band Enforcer, and it's basically some of the newest stuff that they at least released after 2019 Zenith, which I've already reviewed, and I've got my thoughts on it. I already have my thoughts on it. Again, I already gave it. So it's the newest thing. It was released really early in the morning because of, again, they're all the way up in Sweden, and I'm all the way here in California, all again in the United States. So I got it very, very early, and I always stay up for a pretty late time anyways. But so it showed up on Facebook. Again, since I follow Enforcer and Olof Wickstrand, I follow them on there, and I saw the track, so I decided to click on it and to listen to it. And since I was watching basically the recording process, because they released about right now I think there is 5 videos, I think, of them running through the process of laying down the stuff for their new album, but the song they really focused on was the newest track, Kiss of Death. So again, the overall documentary process or vlogging of the recording process for the I guess it is probably either the 5th album from Enforcer. So quite a bit. Let me relook through that. Is it their 5th album at this point? It's because it's only being titled Enforcer 5, I think. Let me look. I could be very wrong on. I could have be overlooking a particular album. Again, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, I guess 6. It is the 6th. Because Zenith was the 5th album. This one's gonna be their 6th album, because they've been going at it, or at least Olof Wickstrand really formed it as a solo just a one-man band project before it really turned into a straight-up legitimate band. And from there on, from 2007 to today. So this is, again, some of the newest material, and again, it was all them processing that. So it was very interesting watch though for the documentary stuff on the whole recording process. Again, Olaf and them are just going through the idea that they're trying to want to go back to sort of sound of like Death by Fire in terms of the production. And so finally, when listening to the finished product of this song, Kiss of Death, And while, yes, musically it is very similar to what you had at least heard on Death by Fire, even at times even close to some of the more faster songs off of From Beyond, which is still my personal favorite Enforcer album. But the one thing I do have to say is that, and I kind of already kind of guessed it anyways, I was very much on the money in my review for Zenith, is that given how experimental Zenith was, at the same time, I thought it wasn't almost too far off with the sort of the overall idea or attack of, let's say, a Killing Machine / Hellbent for Leather from Judas Priest, because if you go back and listen to that album compared to the stuff that was released prior to that album that Judas Priest had released, again, Killing Machine / Hellbent for Leather, depending on whatever part of the country you were living in when that album was released, it was a much more, I wouldn't say commercial, but it was a more melodic sounding record. Even the production-wise, it was even more cleaner, I guess I can say. It was still had a heaviness to it, but it didn't sound nearly as raw as the earlier material. It definitely sounded more refined, more tightened in the production. It just had a more smoother production, and it kind of it seemed different, but it actually to me really it's probably actual fact is it forever changed the way Judas Priest was to really have stuff recorded. That means why they ended up getting Tom Allom and so on. The whole production and the overall attitude and sound really changed throughout into the 1980s. And the Killing Machine / Hellbent for Leather was like the template for that. That's the way I kind of look at Zenith from Enforcer. It's like From Beyond was probably the last album. It was like an end of an era album almost. It was the last studio album where they sounded raw. And Zenith really began the new chapter in where everything's going to sound more refined, a little smoother, I guess, more cleaner in terms of production. It's going to have a less raw sound. It's going to sound a little more cleaner produced, actually, more crisper sound. That's the whole, to me, that album kind of really gave hints on that's going to happen. And sure enough, those guesses I made back in 2019 when I did review that album have pretty much become true, because while, yes, musically for Kiss of Death, it does have that sort of the Death by Fire style riffing, and for like songs like Mesmerized by Fire and so on, it's got that same kind of style riffing. Even some of the more heavier songs in some cases off like Searching for You off of Zenith, it's got that same playing, and drum-wise, there is that Death by Fire sort of drum snaring and tone, but production-wise, it's a lot more cleaner, more refined compared to Death by Fire, because Death by Fire still sounded a little raw for at least an album from 2013. Still had a raw sound, and here it still stays within the sort of same production as Zenith to me. It's still got a more crystal clear production. I wouldn't say clean, but more smoother production compared to like Death by Fire. And again, Zenith is probably was the template. This is why, again, this is probably going to be their British Steel. This is going to be their British Steel. It's going to sort of bring back the heaviness a little bit, but it's going to be more, probably a bit more, what's the best word I'm looking for? More tighter, I guess. It's gonna be more simpler in some cases, maybe. It's not gonna be like Death by Fire by any means, but it's gonna be still gonna have a very rock. It's still gonna rock pretty hard. It's not gonna rock harder than fucking Zenith, which I applaud and appreciate the experimentation, but I still think it was a very discombobulated album, and it just sounded disjointed and herky-jerky in its attack and its presentation. This album is probably not going to be so much, but it's not going to be nearly the sort of raw, Swedish new wave or just Swedish, I guess, modern day retro style heavy metal, the sort of classic heavy metal of From Beyond and Death by Fire, and then even like Into the Night and so on. It's not going to really sound identical to that, even in production wise. It's Olaf and them really definitely just got a good idea on how to really produce their stuff, and now it's going to sound a lot more produced, but still have a very more slightly, still kind of trying to sound raw, but not too raw. It's definitely going to have a different feel and atmosphere, but still, it's probably going to be a fine record anyways. Even fucking Olaf Wickstrand's really his vocal styles, or even the way he's able to perform his vocals, are a lot more smoother and more, just a lot different. He definitely is becoming more of a better vocalist, but it's still good. It still sounds, he still has some good melodies to him. It's just that since an album like Zenith, everything's just changed. It's just changing, and again, it's going to be back to being a little more rockin', more heavier, but it's going to sound a little more smoother compared to the earlier stuff. So that's the way I think with it. With the song like Kiss of Death, it's definitely going to show those effects. It's really going to bring those to more, into more fruition, or get whatever. You know, it's going to be a lot more played out. So it's definitely, I have no problem with it. Again, what matters is the writing of the album, and it seems to be fine. So I'll see what happens if whenever they release the new album, and whatever, we'll get any more details on the new Enforcer album. So there we go. There's my overall thoughts on the sort of what's coming out within the Enforcer camp, and the sort of the song Kiss of Death, and just my overall thoughts on what the album is really turning out to be, and just one of my hints, because they seem to be coming true. When I heard, again, since Zenith, when I reviewed that, I gave those hints. So we'll see if they very well are coming true. So it's definitely changing the overall aspect. That's always what happens with a lot of bands that release, that have more of a commercial appeal, or more melodic, when the whole styles change. It changes the subsequent albums, even when they're trying to go back to that sort of early sound. There's still that sort of refinedness in their playing, that sort of maturity, I guess you can say, is the religious word to use. It's gonna be more apparent on those subsequent albums. It really changes. One particular album can change the rest of the overall albums, but we'll see how much of a change, if it's even that drastic. We'll see whenever the new album comes out. Who knows when it comes out? But it seems like it's already been mixed, or they only just was able to mix one song and they stopped to mix the rest of the songs. Who knows if they're going to continue with the rest of these sort of vlogs or little documentaries of the recording process behind this album, and if they're going to give any more hints on any more songs on the album. But there's always ideas, and some of the ideas they gave on the very first episode of the 6th Enforcer album are definitely going to be, this seems to be interesting. So we'll see. Either way, I'm looking forward to it. Alright, so this might be a very shorter Nasty Metal podcast episode, but it's going to feel like a very shorter one, because here I'm going to run through the Q&A segment of the Nasty Metal podcast here, and it is brought to you by my favorite subscriber, Stormrider. So what does Stormrider have in store for me in terms of top, at least questions here? Let's see. Alright, since this was sent to me through, of course, Facebook Messenger at Tuesday at 6:11 a.m. Just to kind of give you any more bullshit fucking facts. So let's see. Didn't see a schedule for this week, but if I am correct, the Nasty podcast is coming up soon. So, here's my questions. 1. We are at the half of 2021. So what are some of your favorite releases of the first half of the year? 2. The last weeks you've been putting out some lesser content on the channel, and you mentioned before that you are busy, and so I know you mentioned earlier this is just a hobby, and that it's cool. But can you tell us what you've been up to lately? Are you, for instance, in the process of revitalizing your musical career or so? Anyway, all the best and take care. So, really, I guess to answer the second question before I really answer the first one, because it's going to be a really short answer, I really can't answer any of that. I really can't. I don't want to even give away anything, because again, we don't know. Shit can change, so, plans can change. Again, I'm still in the middle of writing stuff or trying to really get stuff done in terms of really recording any sort of music. But it's still a very slow climb. So you just have to wait and see what happens. But again, I can't really say anything more. So that is just me answering your second question. So I hope I'm sorry, but I hope that answers your second question. First question though, this is gonna be an interesting one. Again, I haven't done any sort of video of me really running down my favorite albums that were released within the first half of a year. The one time I think I did that was 2015. That was many years ago. But since this is for a Nasty Metal podcast, this is probably going to be more of a better segment for here. It fits better instead of just making a full-on video. So this again would be for the first question of what are they have, at least again, my favorite albums of the first half of this year, basically. What are my favorite releases, or which releases stick out at me? Well, since I normally, when I now do these, when I review these albums and when I listen to them, I also have a private list on Rate Your Music of albums that are, again, for 2021, and I basically put those albums in that list, and so I have it already listed before, by the time the end of the year is, I can go back to that list, and whatever, I can always edge out before everything is concrete, before I do my end of the year list videos. And that's what I always do with Rate Your Music, and I just have it private. So, because again, it's just a good idea for me to do that. I think it's always a good idea to have your shit already listed ahead of time. So while you're listening to the albums and whatnot. So I already have this stuff private, but I can always share you what are my top 10 so far for this year. So, right now was coming at number 10, since I just released this review already. It is Sacred Land, the fifth album from Eyesore. That's at number 10 here. Liturnia Rempart from Herzl is at number 9. Mountain of Madness from Liquid Steel is at number 8. Into the Storm from the Japanese speed metal band Significant Point is at number 7. Bang the Rights from the British metal band Heavy Sentence is at number 6. Preserved in Time from the doom metal band Wheel is at number 5. Empires in the Sun from Thorium is at number 4. And of course, Dealing Death from Vulture. Again, one of my favorite German modern day speed metal, thrash metal bands. That's at number 3. So for both 1 and 2, again, surprisingly for right now, for this first half of this year, Out of the Ashes Into the Fire from the comeback album from Axe Switch is at number 2. And of course, Sky Destroyer from Midnight Spell is at number 1 here. So right now, Sky Destroyer from Midnight Spell is still my number. Right now, it still could very well be the number 1 album from this year, but this is my number 1 for the first half of this year. It's still an album I still listen to a lot. But those are my albums right now. Again, I decided to list you 10, but it's a working in progress too. So again, this is only for the first half. By the time I listen to more albums and when I start placing albums in that list or putting new albums in that list, depending where I put them, that 10 list could very well change and always can end up looking different by the end of the year. But for right now, that's how the top 10 lists of this year, because I just wanted to name you 10. Because I think that to me, at least the number 10 or the 10 list is the most important for a list to begin with. So that's probably the most important. So that is my favorites for the first half of the year. But again, that 10 list, whatever those albums have, the way that is, for those albums that are in that 10 there, again, I can always go back to this particular podcast, or any of them, or any of you, when I do my 10 for the end of the year, you can always go. Again, it would probably be a good idea to go back to episode number 17 here of the Nasty Metal Podcast and re-listen to that listing there, and you can always tell what was there before and what ends up being there after. There we go, you know, a before-after effect there. All right, so that's about it. That hopefully that answers your questions there, Stormrider. So if you want to send in any more questions for me to answer on these Nasty Metal Podcast episodes, again, I'm going to leave you a link, on your screen where you can send them. That is, of course, NastyMetalProductions@gmail.com. That's where you can send me your questions. But again, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you know how to use Messenger, and you can send me questions through there. Or you can also send in your questions in the comments section. Again, I'm giving you 3 options to send in questions. So if you want to send in questions, you can choose any of those 3 options. And if any of those 3 are good for you, go ahead and fucking use it. I'm trying to I want to beef up the Q&A segment for these podcast episodes. So instead of just receiving questions from Stormrider, who is, again, the most loyal subscriber to me here, a fucking loyal subscriber, and congrats to Stormrider. So there we go. That pretty much now ends out episode number 17 of the Nasty Metal Podcast. I know episode number 18 will come out later within July, since we are close to the end of June here. I hope all of you at least got some interesting stuff out of this episode. I know it's not the longest, but it's definitely still enough entertainment for you, enough to, to just bullshit around for the day, have something on in the background. That's the whole point of some of this podcast episodes anyways, is to have something for you guys to play in the background instead of just having it all silent and shit. I know some of you like to play records, but you always can play a fucking podcast while you're playing a record. It always, again, it adds in more music ambiance and whatnot in the background along with me fucking talking. It might make a very interesting experience for any of you. Alright, so with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. I'll see you again within next week for those the scheduled content on the channel. So with that, this is Every Thrash saying I'm out. I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.